Vinay, are you there? So kindly, we would like to welcome our next expert, Mr. Karan Puri ji.
Okay, ma'am. Uh, Thanks to Dr. H.K. Sudhana, sir, for such valuable ideas regarding intellectual property rights in patent research. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, yes, you are audible.
Okay. Now I would like to introduce our next
Dr. Vinay, you are audible.
prestigious guest, that is Mr. Karan Puri. Yes, ma'am. Karan Puri, that is a associate vice president at Innoval IP. He has an experience of more than 6 years in the patent research and analytics. His area of expertise including infringement analysis, patentability, that is searches, freedom to operate searches, landscape analysis, company profiling, and business intelligence. He also involved in technologies related to autonomous and self-driving vehicles, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. He has extensive experience in companies that is involved in IP, and he handled a team of 70 IP experts to support the clients in their IP and business consulting projects, information research, competitive intelligence, and patent in India, and also in the other geographics like
I guess your voice is not audible right now.
बोलो बेटा.
Hello? Hello? Ma'am, is the introduction finished? Because I can't hear anything right now.
hello.
Hello?
Yes, sir. You can start, sir. I have finished the introduction.
Okay, so your voice was not audible. Am I audible right now?
Sorry,
Yes, yes.
Mr. Karanji, there was some technical issue with Dr. Vinay. I welcome you to this forum. I am very thankful that you have been spared your valuable time for today's event. And I know that we will learn a lot from you about the patents, about the IPR. So I welcome you to this forum. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you, Vanessa, for the lovely introduction. So, as rightly said, that today's session will be about basics of intellectual property rights. Harish sir also, I guess, gave a brief, right, on what is an IP, what is a patent, and what are the steps involved in a patent. So, there might be some redundant information that would be there, but I guess the students and the faculties could use that as a revision, right? I'll be sharing certain real life examples. So there are a lot of questions that are asked by faculties and the students as to what happens to their invention once they submit the idea, right? On which parameters are these checked, and if they are checked, if they are rejected, then how can we overcome it? Further means, as many students are from agriculture background and paramedical background, so they say that means we are not generating new ideas. How can we generate new ideas, right? So I'll just give you some real life examples. So irrespective of the domain you are from, right? So you may be from computer science or electrical engineering. These will be examples that you can relate to in day-to-day life, and then you can change or do some certain enhancements to the already existing products to make your own inventions, right? So today's session will be about basics of IPR. I'll be sharing certain real life problems, and then how can we solve those real life problems to get granted patents, right? There might be some redundant information that was there in the previous session, but as I've said that you can use that as a revision task, right? So I guess I'll share my PPT. I'll switch off my video, and then we'll be starting with the session. So is my PPT visible?
Yeah,
Yes,
sir,
sir.
it's visible. It's visible.
Okay, Indian IP at a glance, right? So this is a slide that must be visible, right? Okay, so I'll be starting with the session. So good afternoon to each and every one of you, and thank you very much for joining the session. I have already stated that what will be in today's session. So let's start with this, right? So there are various kind of intellectual property rights. Means those can be grouped under patents, trademarks, copyrights, industrial designs, or we call them design patents, integrated circuit topographies, right? To name a few. On top of this, there could be certain other intellectual property rights such as trade secrets are there, geographical indications are there, domain name are there, right? So all of these can be grouped under different kind of intellectual property rights that you have. Now the basic question comes is the means I'll be starting off with the patent, right? So what exactly are patents? In the last session also you must have a brief idea of what are patents. So patents are basically techno-legal documents. So whenever I say techno-legal documents, why do I say it? Because they involve a certain amount of technical expertise, right? So that technical expertise could be in any sector. So it could be related to a pharma sector, it could be related to a computer science domain, it could be related to an electrical domain, it could be related to a mechanical domain, right? So anything, any expertise that you have technically can be used means while creating an invention. Further, why these are called as techno-legal documents? Because whenever you disclose your invention, right, to public or to the government, means and if it is granted, then what happens is that there are certain rights that the government give. So those rights are is that for a period, for a specific period of 20 years, you are the sole inventors, you will be able to make, use, license or sell that invention, right? So it is your authority. So this is what we mean when we say that patents are techno-legal documents. But are every invention that you send, right? So there may be students or faculties that would have sent us the invention, right? And maybe they would have received a report stating that your invention is rejected, right? So why does one means an invention gets rejected? There may be certain criterias to it, right? So yes, there are definitely criterias or a methodology on which we check. So whenever you send us the invention, so I'll be taking few examples, and I'll be telling you a detailed methodology of what exactly happens to your invention, right? So suppose means any student along with a group of 4 students or 5 students along with the faculty, they develop an idea, right? So we have a form, they fill that form and they send it to us that this is the idea that we want to disclose. What we do is that we do a patentability search, right? So what is a patentability search? In patentability search, what we do is that we try to find out various prior arts that are there. So prior art is a very fancy name given to any document that is already available in the public domain, right? So it could be a non-patent literature, it could be any YouTube video on YouTube, it could be any video on Facebook or Instagram, right? It can be any prototype that a company has made. So you must have seen foldable smartphones, right, of Samsung. So these are protected long ago, right? So I guess the final product is out now, but what has happened is that there were a lot of prototypes that were there. So there were a lot of research work, there were a lot of white papers that were already disclosed, right? So we try to find out all the aspects, right? So we try to find out all the things that are there. So in patentability search, we try to find everything that is there in the public domain, right? Before you have submitted your invention or before you have filed your invention. So what happened? We do a patentability search in which we find out various prior arts, right? So as I suggest, means as I've told that prior art is nothing but a fancy name given to any document that is available in the public domain before you have filed or submitted the invention, right? So it could be any video on YouTube, any video on Facebook, on Instagram, any white paper that a company has launched, right? So it can be any prototype that a company has launched. So suppose foldable smartphones are introduced now, right? The final product, but the prototypes were launched 7 or 8 years ago, right? And the patents were launched, I guess, 10 years ago, right? So there is a holistic process that takes place. First of all, the R&D team takes care that what exactly we want to make, how we want to make it, right? They publish certain research papers, right? So if your invention is matching with those research papers, then also we say that your invention is not new and hence it is rejected, right? Because the final product is not there, but how that product will look is already disclosed in the research paper, right? So maybe the working is already disclosed in the working prototype. The final product is yet not ready, but they have introduced a working prototype along with various features that would be there in the final model, right? So if these things are already available, then what we suggest that please remold your invention so that it is not rejected and it gets approved, right? So we do a patentability search. You send us your invention and we check it on certain criterias, right? And before that, I have already told about prior art, right? So prior art could be a non-patent literature. So a non-patent literature could be any research article, could be any video, means anything published on in a newspaper, right? Anything which is there on company's website can be constituted among non-patent literature. Means in the slide you can see the example of blockchain research and applications. So if your invention is related to blockchain, right, and whatever you want to disclose, whatever you want to claim is already disclosed in this research paper, then what will happen is that there are high chances that your invention will be rejected. Why? Because it has already been disclosed by some other individual living in certain part of a country or in another part of the country. They've already disclosed that information. So what you need to do is that, of course, you can make inventions on blockchain, but your idea, your methodology, your system, your hardware should be advanced than the already stated prior arts, right? If it is the case, then it can be approved. Else, what will happen is that this will act as a valid prior art for your invention, and hence there are higher chances that your invention might be rejected, right? So this was one of the examples of our non-patent literature is a research article that has already been published. Similarly, what can happen is that prior arts could include patent also, right? So there could be patents that are granted, there could be patents that are just filed, there are patents that have been published, right? So anything that is related to patent can be clubbed in the patent literature, right? So even if there are any patents that are just published, right, they are not granted, but if they are published and if your invention is similar to those patent, then of course your invention would be rejected, citing the similar reasons that this invention has already been disclosed in the prior art, right? So I guess there are certain keywords. One is we do a patentability search. In patentability search, we try to find out various prior arts. Now there is a second keyword as prior art. Prior art is nothing but a fancy name given to each and every document that is available before we have submitted the idea, right? So that is prior art. And then of course non-patent literature and patent literature, right? So non-patent literature includes everything that is not related to patents, right? So non-patent literature is YouTube videos, research articles on IEEE and ResearchGate, right? A company introducing a prototype or a commercial product also can be there, right? So if you are making a self-driving vehicle, right? So your invention should not be similar to the already disclosed Tesla that are there, right? Or Tesla cars. If it is, then there are, of course, I'm repeating that there are higher chances that your invention might be rejected because it is already known in the public. Now, I guess I've already stated that yes, means we do a patentability search, right? So why we do it is that examiner will search it, right? So is patentability search really that much important or is it mandatory? So patentability search is not mandatory. But what we do is that we exactly replicate the process that will happen to your patent applications once it reaches the Indian Patent Office. So what we do is that how the examiner will examine your patent application, we do it in the exactly same order. So there is a methodology behind it, is that the examiner will check it on three parameters. So the first one is the novelty criteria, the second one is the non-obviousness criteria, and third one is the industrial applicability criteria, right? So these are the three major conditions on which an examiner checks. So what we do is that we already check in means on these three parameters, and then we suggest to the inventor as that your invention is not satisfying one of the criteria. So what you can do is that you can remold your invention. You can rectify some of the features that are there. Maybe you can add certain new features. You can modify your invention so as to so that it can satisfy the patentability criteria, because once filed with the Indian Patent Office, you cannot make any changes, right? So that is why, though patentability search is not mandatory, but of course there are higher chances of a grant if your application has gone through a patentability search process, right? Because what we do is that we check on a similar methodology that is there. We check it on whether your invention is satisfying the novelty criteria, the non-obviousness criteria, and industrial applicability criteria, right? So now what are these criteria? What is the novelty criteria, right? So as the name suggests, that novelty criteria means your invention should be new, right? So it is as simple as that. Your invention should be new and should not overlap with the conditions or with the inventions that are already present, right? So suppose I'll give you some basic example. So it is an example that everyone can relate to. So I guess we have all seen on the highways that there is a car burning, right? There are accident happening, right? Why it is so? Because I guess there is some spark in the engine compartment, or maybe there could be some smoke in the engine compartment, there could be a flame in the engine compartment, right, due to the malfunctioning of the car. And what happens is that means by the time we want to suppress the fire, it has already blown up to large extent, right? So that what happens, there could be a loss of life, there could be a loss of property also. So now suppose you are the inventor, right? So you want to make an automatic fire suppression system that is installed in the engine compartment, right? So this is one example, right? So now means whenever you develop a patent or an invention, first of all, it is really important that you need to have a problem statement. What problem is your invention solving, right? Before creating the invention, if you exactly know which type of problem or what problem your invention is solving, it will be very easy for you to add components and add conditions, right, to make a patent. So this, I guess, you can use it as a template to make your own inventions also. So suppose the problem was is that we don't have to manually intervene, right? Because there is a loss of life, a loss of property, right? So there are also people harmed while suppressing the fire manually, right? So now what we are developing is that we want to solve all the things that we have discussed, right? We don't want to manually suppress the fire, we want to do it automatically. And why? Because we want to save life, we want to save property, and we want to save the people who are getting harmed, because I guess the explosion is taking place, right? So now certain inventors, what they did was they had this problem statement. What they did was they made a device, they made a system. So what they did was they added temperature sensors, they added flame sensors, they added certain smoke sensors to the engine compartment of the vehicle, right? So now what used to happen is that, and they integrated it with certain pipes and nozzles, right? So that whenever there is a certain threshold that is reached, so suppose there is smoke in the engine compartment, right? Or there is a flame detected in the engine compartment, automatically with the help of a controller, the pipes and the nozzles are activated. And I guess this spray a fire suppression agent, right? And due to it, what can happen is that the fire can get suppressed automatically without manual intervention, right? At a very early age. So the problems that we were solving is that fire and smoke are not detected in the early stages, right? So now what we have done is that we have added that thing, that maybe by the use of sensors, what we have done, we are alleviating this problem. Now we are putting certain conditions, right? Because it could consume a lot of power, right? If all the sensors are switched on every time, right? So maybe what can happen is that a smoke sensor could be there, right? Or a temperature sensor could be there. So temperature sensor is switched on permanently, right? But what can happen whenever a threshold amount is reached, it can switch on the smoke sensor, right? It could give a command to the controller that temperature is greater than a threshold value. Kindly check whether there is smoke or not, right? And again, what can happen if there is smoke, then automatically what can happen? A smoke sensor is interlinked with various flame sensors in order to see that whether the flame flame is detected or fire is detected or not, and based on that I guess the automatically suppression system starts, right? They use certain kind of agents, and based on that the fire suppressing is taking place, right? So now what has happened is that we have solved a particular kind of problem. So we had a problem, we have devised a system, right? So now what we have done is that we have listed down few components, but we have also listed down a methodology of how to do it, when to activate which kind of sensor, right? We are using a controller, right? We are using pipes, how these pipes are connected. So if we can give a detailed methodology, right? If we can give a detailed methodology of these are the things that are present, we can have a granted patent, right? But it is very important to check whether it is satisfying the novelty criteria and the non-obviousness criteria and industrial applicability criteria, right? So suppose you devise your invention, right? So what you are I'll again summarize. What you have done is that you have created an invention that is a fire suppression system that is used in the engine compartment of a vehicle. You are using three different kind of sensors: a temperature sensor, a flame sensor, and basically a smoke sensor, right? And you have interlinked all these three sensors with I guess a particular methodology or certain conditions, right? And then you are making a device, or you want to claim a device that is patentable. Now this is your invention, you have jotted this down on a piece of paper, and then you have sent it to us, right? So now what will happen is that, as I said earlier, I'll perform a patentability search on it, right? So whenever I'm performing a patentability search, I'll first check whether there are any available prior arts, whether there is any document that is available that is already disclosed in the public domain, right? So suppose if I find one prior art or one research article in which each and every component is located, right? So I'm exactly getting the conditions and the same components that are already present, right? So now what I'll paste that result, I guess elaborate certain comments, and then what I will suggest is that this kind of invention or this kind of component or this kind of hardware is already present earlier, right? So now you cannot have a granted patent, because what will happen is that even if you file it, it will be rejected because these kind of inventions are already there, right? So kindly remold your invention, right? So what are the advantages of doing a patentability search is that if the examiner rejects it, then you have nowhere to go, right? So it is rejected. But if we reject it, what can happen is that you can mold your invention, remold your invention in certain way, so that it can again satisfy the patentability criteria, right? You can make repeatedly make changes to your invention. So this is one important aspect of performing a patentability search, is that if we are locating all the components in one single document, then we suggest to the inventor that it is getting rejected by the novelty criteria because it is not able to satisfy the novelty criteria, and hence your invention is rejected, right? So that you can make certain enhancements and you can rectify or remodify your invention. So the next criteria is the non-obviousness criteria. Suppose if we take the similar example, right? So I guess you are taking the same example of what we are doing is that we are suppressing the fire in the engine compartment using three different type of sensors and their methodology or how they are interlinked with each other. Now what can happen is that there could be one prior art or one research article in which two of the sensors I have found, right? But I'm not able to find the third sensor. But that third sensor is already present in another prior art. So means 90% of the inventions are rejected by the non-obviousness criteria. So please make sure that you understand this criteria so that you can have multiple granted patents, because most of the inventions satisfy the novelty criteria, but they fail the non-obviousness criteria. Because what happens is that suppose you have used three kind of sensors, right? So maybe in one prior art two sensors are present, and in a second prior art or in any second research article or product or patent, one means a fire suppression engine. I'll just give an example. So suppose you're using a fire suppression system in by using three different sensors: temperature, flame, and smoke sensor, right? So maybe what can happen is that you can get temperature sensor, and based on that automatically a flame sensor is activated, but you haven't got smoke sensors, right? Maybe there could be a separate article, there could be a separate research work, there could be a separate patent that discloses maybe fire detection based on smoke sensors, right? So if that is the case, if I'm able to combine those prior arts, right? So if they are analogous to each other, if the two inventions, right, I can combine them, and any person having ordinary skill in the art, if they can combine those prior arts and it can result into your invention, then what happens is that your invention has high chances that it may be rejected, right? So please make sure that your invention is not just a mere combination of all the things that are already disclosed in the prior art, right? So maybe temperature sensor and flame sensor, we could find one prior art, and in another article, what we can do is that we can find smoke sensors that detect fire, and based on that automatically the suppression of fire is taking place, right? So if we have these kind of things, right, if I'm combining two of the articles, if I'm combining two of the articles, and if it can result into your invention, then what will happen is that your invention still has chance that it may be rejected, right? So please make sure that you are just not combining various prior arts in order to make your invention, but there is always one essential step that is there, right? That step is basically the inventive step, right? So what we have discussed is that we have discussed two criteria. First of all, we have discussed that your invention should be new, right? So your invention cannot be just you cannot just cut copy paste, right? Or it cannot be just overlapping of all the things that are already disclosed, right? So what you need to do is that your invention needs to have one important your invention needs to have that one important step, right? One important novelty, and based on that what can happen is that your invention can be approved if it has the novelty step. The second criteria is that your invention should satisfy the non-obviousness criteria. So whenever I say the non-obviousness criteria is that even if your invention is getting rejected by multiple prior art references, then what will happen is that your invention should satisfy and should not just be a mere combination of all the things that are disclosed in the prior art, right? So please make sure that your invention satisfies both these criteria, the non-obviousness criteria and the novelty criteria. The third criteria is basically the industrial applicability criteria, right? So now what is industrial applicability criteria is that whatever thing, whatever invention, whatever hardware you make, right, can be reproduced in any kind of industry, right? So it can be an agriculture industry, it could be an automotive industry, it could be an industry that is related to furnitures, right? It could be an industry that is related to garments, right? So it could be any kind of industry, and if your invention can be reproduced in any kind of industry, then of course there are high chances that your invention can be a granted patent, right? So if your invention is satisfying all the three criterias, right, simultaneously, then of course your invention means is ready to be filed, and we suggest to the inventor that please proceed with the further filing process so that it can be granted, right? But the main criteria is the non-obviousness criteria. I'll again reiterate on that point that multiple inventions I have seen throughout my career that they are rejected. They satisfy the novelty criteria. They have certain utility. They are industrially reproducible. But what they fail is that maybe they have 5 or 6 key features, right? And we are not able to locate all those 6 key features in one single document. But what we can do is that if we can look at all those key features, suppose if I'm able to find 2 key features in one prior art, another 2 key features in another prior art, and another 2 key features in another prior art, right? So what I'm doing is that I'm not able to find all the restrictions, right, or all the components in one single prior art, but I can find it individually, right? And if I can combine them, if any ordinary person having ordinary skill in the art, right, can combine those articles, and it can result into your invention, or it can yield into your invention, then of course there are high chances that your invention can be rejected by a combination of those parrots, right? So be very intelligent enough, means whenever you want to make an invention, please be make sure that you satisfy all the three criteria: the novelty criteria, the non-obviousness criteria, and industrial applicability criteria, right? Now on top of this, if means if your invention is just a software, right, or a business method or an algorithm, right, then of course also there are high chances that your invention will be rejected by the Indian Patent Office, because what happens under section 3K, right? So there are certain restrictions and criteria that are put under section 3K of Indian Patents Act, right, under section 3. So under section 3 there are a lot of criteria and a lot of restrictions of what cannot be patented in India, right? So the I guess the condition that means would be advantageous is that Section 3K of Indian Patent Act states that a mere algorithms or business methods or mathematical expressions, right, and softwares cannot be patentable subject matter. So they are not patentable subject matter. So if these cannot be patented, how to have certain you may have seen certain inventions that use artificial intelligence or machine learning, right? So what are these? These are also algorithms. So how come these are patented? So what happens is that if you can combine the software or the algorithm part, right, with a novel hardware, then you can have a granted patent. Else, I guess mere software per se inventions are not patentable in India, right? So what you are doing is that, suppose I'll give you certain example that is based on smart agriculture, right? So nowadays you would have seen that there are a lot of technology involved in agriculture. So what we are doing is that we are notifying the farmers that when to switch on, I guess, the nozzles, right, or when to switch on the pipe, right, so that means appropriate amount of water is given to the crops, right, what crops should they sow, right, so they get appropriate results. Now, how come that is decided? See, there are certain sensors that could be there, right? So there could be a humidity sensor or a rainfall prediction sensor or weather monitoring sensors, right? So there could be moisture sensor that could be there, right? So there could be certain sensors that check the soil quality. So there could be various type of sensors, those could be involved. And what they do is that they gather the data. So once they gather the data, they send that information to a central cloud, where what happens is that a set of algorithms, set of AI algorithms or machine learning algorithms, they execute, right? And with that, what can happen is that we can generate insights. Insights regarding what? Insights regarding what are the things means that the farmer should do, what kind of crops they should grow, when to I guess use water, right, when to switch off or switch on the pump so that they could release water or they could stop water, right? So all of these notifications are given to the farmer so that effective farming and effective smart agriculture system could be made, right? So now this is an overall system. What can happen is that certain individuals, what they can do is that they just rely on the application part, that we will make a mobile application that is for farmers. Now just mere application, just mere software is not patentable. Yes, if you can show that your software is based on certain kind of hardware, right, or software is just for the execution part, the main work is done by the hardware, right? The hardware is the hero of the component and software are the sub hero. If you can prove that, of course you can have multiple granted patents. But apart from that, what can happen is that if your software is means lacking or is not integrated with a set of novel hardware, then of course there are high chances that your invention would be rejected, right? So while formulating or creating the invention, please make sure that your invention is just not rely does not rely on softwares and algorithms, but they also include or are integrated with certain kind of hardware elements, right, that could make it patentable. Because mere softwares, algorithms, business methods, mathematical expressions, right, business methods, these are not patentable subject matter in India, right? This I have already disclosed that means how are patents or inventions that are related to AI and ML are patentable, because what they do is that they integrate means the execution of how the algorithms are implemented by a hardware, right? So basically you would have seen certain robots, right? So those robots use AI and ML technology, but what robots have multiple sensors, they have multiple hardware elements, right? So how those hardware elements are getting controlled by a software, if that is the case, then you can have multiple patents. But if your invention is just about software, then of course it will be very difficult for you to get a granted patent in India. Now the next question comes is that means how means there was one such problem statement that I gave, was the problem was related to fire that was taking in the engine compartment and how we have to manually suppress that fire, right? So that was the problem, and then we devised a solution, then we implemented a solution, right? We formulated our strategies, and then we created a system that talked about automatically suppression of those of fire, right? By using multiple sensors, and then we saw that whether the system was satisfying the novelty criteria or the non-obviousness criteria and the applicability criteria, right? So there could be means there could be certain individuals that would say that how do we generate new ideas? Is that you first have to identify a problem statement, right? So that could be a problem statement related to anything. So that could be based on means suppose if I take the example of suicides, right? So what we are doing is that there is a huge problem, means many people, many students are committing suicide, right? So means that is a very big problem, right? So now what can happen is that maybe we can create devices that stops suicide, right? Now how can we stop suicide? Is that means we have to first go back and see that why does a person commit suicide? Because they are depressed, they have some fear, right? Maybe I guess there could be certain failures that means they could be failed in an exam, right? Or there could be other financial losses that a person has just gone through and they want to commit suicide, right? So now what can happen is that this is a big problem, and now we should focus on the problem statement as to how the persons commit suicide. So the majority of suicides that happen is through ceiling fans, right? So now what we can do is that we can devise certain ceiling fan, right, in such a way that a person cannot commit suicide while being hanged through a ceiling fan. What can we do is that we can actually install a certain weight sensor onto the ceiling fan, and there could be certain telescopic rod that could be there. So how our fan is connected to the ceiling is with the help of a telescopic rod, right? So now what is telescopic rod? Basically, it's an expandable rod, right? So whenever a person tries to hang themselves, right? So a weight sensor will detect that, right? Maybe a weight greater than 10, right? So we can have a programming for that. So now you can see that we are basically programming. We are using software, but what we are doing is that we are implementing that software in a particular kind of novel hardware, right? We are implementing those softwares in a ceiling fan, and now automatically when the weight sensor detects that a weight is greater than a means a particular threshold, it sends signal to the controller so that the controller could send signals to the telescopic rod as to move downwards, right? So now that rod moves downwards, and then what happens, a person does not commit suicide, right? So that is depreciated till the ground level. Now you would have seen that these kind of examples you would have seen in Shark Tank India also, right? Means these kind of examples were shown where anti-suicidal ceiling fans were brought, right? So now how are these patentable, right? What else I can do? So maybe what, as I've said that maybe what you can do is that the problem statement could remain the same. So, it is about your solution, how you are implementing your invention, right? So your invention consists of the features that you want to add. So maybe what you can do is that you can take motivation from this parrot. So suppose if your invention also constitutes a telescopic rod and a weight sensor, and based on that the telescopic rod is depreciated downwards, then of course your invention would be rejected. But what you can do is that you can add your own components to the already existing inventions, right? So now suppose if one such example if I take, you can add a display system to the ceiling fan. So whenever a person tries to commit, so there could be a weight sensor that detects whether a person is committing the suicide or not, and what happens means that telescopic rod move downwards. So you have taken these 2 points from the prior art, that is okay. But what is your novelty? Maybe what you can do is that you can add a display to the already existing ceiling fan, and whenever a person tries to commit suicide, automatically a video call is connected between their relatives and him, right? So maybe if you can add this point, then it could be a point of novelty, right? There could be a certain other examples also which you can incorporate. So what you can do is that there could be certain micro projectors. So why does a person commit suicide? Is because they are depressed, right, and they are not feeling good. So suppose if in the past if we can make them realize their achievements. So suppose in 12th they got low grades, but in 10th they were the class toppers. So maybe there could be certain memories that could be pre-fed into the ceiling fan, or maybe based on some social media parsing. What can be done is that certain images, certain videos could be transported into the ceiling fan, and automatically with the help of micro projectors, so whenever a person wants to commit suicide, they are activated, the micro projectors are activated, and automatically a 3D hologram or 3D display of their achievements is shown, so that there are chances that he may not commit suicide, right? So these are the components that you can add. So what you have done is that you are solving the same problem, you are still solving the same problem. How you are solving it, the process has changed, the components have changed, right? So that it becomes a new invention, and hence you can get multiple granted patents out of it, right? So this was one example where you can add or incorporate certain new changes to the already existing invention, and hence you can get a granted patent, right? So problem statement could be same, but how you are proposing your invention, what are the components that you are using, what are the conditions that you are using, can be a point of novelty. They could satisfy the non-obviousness criteria, and hence your invention could be granted, right? So please make sure that even if your invention is rejected, you add certain new components to it to make it patentable. Now suppose means this is the agriculture based example that I've already given, right? So maybe there are variety of inventions that are based on smart agriculture where multiple sensors are there. The data is getting means collected and sent to a central cloud, and based on that certain new notifications are sent to the farmers as to which type of crop they should use, how they should use it, right? So maybe what you can do is that maybe you can analyze those prior arts, maybe you can do a quick Google search on those, and based on that what you can do is you can add components, you can add the restrictions, and then you can have a granted patent, right? Now I guess there were certain patents on women's safety, right? So you also would have seen that there is a means great significance that is given to women's safety. Now you would have seen certain smart watches, right, that have an SOS button. So earlier what used to happen is that SOS button was there. So whenever I pressed or anyone pressed that SOS button, automatically a pre-fed message, right, displaying means the user's location was sent to the near and dear ones, to the relatives, right? So now I guess, are there only one patent, is there only one patent on women's safety? No, because the problem is that we want to solve the problem related to women's safety. How we want to achieve it is our invention, right? So there could be one smartwatch that has an SOS button, but few of the inventors, they realize that merely having an SOS button, suppose somebody has held my hand from behind, right, and I'm not able to press that SOS button, then what will happen? So what the inventors did was they added a microphone to it. So while adding a microphone to it, all the contextual awareness data was also captured, right? So if I'm screaming, right, or if anyone is screaming, and in those screaming, if they utter certain keywords, so that could be help or in danger, then automatically user's location will be sent, right? So what we have done is that we are solving the same problem, we are integrating SOS button, but what we have done is that we have changed the criteria, we have changed the condition. Now how the SOS is getting activated is through a microphone, by having contextual awareness data or facility, by using means it is capturing my voice, and based on that, if it detects that it's a high pitched tone, or if I'm in danger, it automatically sets a predefined message, so that the problem related to pressing of that SOS button is solved, right? So there was a problem statement, this was the novelty criteria, right? It also satisfied the non-obviousness criteria, and hence it was made patentable, right? So what you can also do is that you can solve similar kind of problems. You can identify those problems, you can identify how you are solving that particular problem, right, and hence you can get a granted patent. Now I guess another such example would be means an umbrella that is integrated into a bag, right? So means I have faced it a lot of times. I guess hope that you also would have faced the similar kind of problems. Is that during rainy days we fail to carry umbrellas, right? So if it's raining outside, we carry the umbrella. But what happens once we leave for the office? We always carry a bag with us, right? So if you are students or working in an MNC, what can happen is that it could be sunny weather outside at 9 o'clock, and means at 10 o'clock it starts raining. What can happen? We don't have an umbrella, and then we have to wait at a metro station, or what we do is that we get wet. So now how to solve that particular task is that certain inventors, what they did was they identified this problem, and they added or attached an umbrella to the already existing a bag. Now automatically means with the help of a button, automatically that umbrella was integrated with that bag, and if we push that button, automatically it will get actuated, and it will provide protection, right, in case of sunny weather, or in case of means if there is rain outside. So these are the inventions, these are the problems that we face in day to day life, right? So this is the problem, I guess, I hope many can relate to, right? So if you can solve this kind of problems, so this is a huge invention that could be a huge commercialized product, right? So it is very important to see solve various day to day life problems so that it could solve a bigger task and it can be commercialized easily. Now, suppose if you are thinking that if anything can be made on this, yes, there could be certain mechanisms that could differ, right? So now what you want to do is that you have an idea, right? So you want to integrate umbrella into a bag. You can still do it. What you can do is that you can change the mechanism of how umbrella is interlinked with that bag, and then you can have a granted patent. Maybe as I suggested that what it is doing is that maybe with the help of a button it is getting actuated. What you can do is that you can have certain weather monitoring sensors, you can have some sunlight detection sensor, you can have certain wind sensor or rain sensor, and based on that automatically it gets actuated. So the purpose here is that if you can add conditions, if you can add your own components, and if you can make any existing invention, means you can add certain novel steps to those inventions, you can take motivation from those patents and research articles, and if you can integrate certain novel steps and inventive steps, of course you can have a granted patent over the existing prior arts. I'll give you two more examples, and then we'll, I guess, probably, I guess, wind the session, and then we can have the question and answers. So those two ideas are, so these are the examples, means that are provided by people who are not working in an engineering domain, right? So if there is any assistance that is needed as to how those sensors work, we will provide that information. But the main thing is that to make you aware that it is not rocket science. You always don't have to make certain things on satellites or various medical devices, right? Maybe there could be certain things on a smart bottle that you can patent, right? So day to day life examples, just see various problems and how to develop those solutions. If you are not means technological ready, then of course what we can do is that we can help you as to how you want to achieve it, what you want to achieve, we can help you with that. But the main idea is really important as to what problem you want to solve and how you want to solve it, right? Similarly, there is always a doubt that we have to create a working prototype of the existing invention, right? So that is not at all essential. In very less cases, if your invention is not feasible, the examiner will ask for a prototype. Else, what you can do is that if you can manually make drawings with the help of a pencil, right, and you can think of the ideas that you want to patent, of course, you can have a granted patent. So we will take care of the design aspect. We will take care of the components that needs to be integrated. But what is important is that you should give new ideas that include the novelty step and the non-business step. I'll give you two of the examples. So suppose an example related to smart trophy, right? So I guess many of you would have received certain trophies, right, during their life. Now, what can happen is that a trophy, what it represents an achievement, right? So does certain trophies have means features from which person you got that trophy from? No, right? So a smart trophy always has name, maybe the year in which you got the trophy, and for what competition did you won the trophy. But does it have the memories, right? So maybe it could have a certain display in which what can happen is that the trophy could represent various memories that were associated with that trophy, right? Who gave you that trophy, when you got that trophy, right? Maybe the reminder on the anniversary, right? So suppose, I guess, many of you would love watching cricket, right? So in 2011, I guess MS Dhoni won the man of the match, right, in the World Cup final. Now he got a trophy. So suppose if that trophy could include, means on every anniversary that he I guess showcased that innings, on every anniversary, if he can get reminders, if on that display he could be shown that how many boundaries he hit, how many runs he hit, right? And means what sort of catches did he take, right? Maybe in football, if it is there, then means how many goals did a player hit, right? So maybe if that display could display certain memories of that tournament, certain memories of that match, who gave you that trophy, how that trophy was, means why that trophy was given, right? Maybe the stats related to that trophy. If we can make certain things on that, of course we can get a granted patent, right? So all we could see is a trophy that is, I guess, that has a name engraved on it. Maybe we could make that trophy a digital version trophy, right? So what can happen is that we can add a certain display system, we can have a micro projector to it, right? Maybe it can display how many fours we hit, right? So these type of components we can add, and hence we can get means various patents. uh, Another example is a geyser example, right? So we all must be using geyser at home, right, during winters. Now what happens is that means I have faced this problem many times, that we switch on the geyser and then we forget to turn it off, right? After beating also it is switched on, right? And there's a huge amount of power that is consumed, right? And it reflects it into the electricity bill. Now what we can do is that, so suppose there could be multiple persons that could be there, right? And we cannot identify the fault of which person actually switched on the geyser, right? So maybe what we can do is that we can make a geyser that is based on multiple user profiles, right? So now it stores the information. So suppose it is linked with our mobile phone, and what it does is that it parses the information regularly. So it could parse whether I have a meeting at 9 o'clock or 9:30, and automatically it could switch on at 9 o'clock and it could switch off after 9:30, right? So maybe if we have an advanced geyser that is based on multiple user profiles, that is interlinked with the smartphone devices, so that knows my actually means the working schedule. So suppose if I work from Monday to Friday, right, and Saturdays and Sundays are off. So maybe what can happen is that it automatically switches on at 8 o'clock, 8:30, depending on my work schedule, and automatically switches off after 15 minutes, right? So it could save a lot of power. Similarly, it could detect that today is Saturday and Sunday and I'll wake up at 11 o'clock. So automatically it does not switch on at 11 means 8 o'clock. It switches on at 10:45, right? Maybe a reminder could be sent to my mobile phone as to please bathe before leaving the home, right? So maybe these kind of advancements could be done to the already existing devices that could be there, right? Maybe depending on the outside weather temperature, right? So it could be summer, but outside it could be rainy, right? So now what can happen is that automatically it would ask that whether I should switch on the geyser or not, right? And maybe based on, I guess, the smartphone or a remote, we could control that geyser, right? So maybe if I'm adding these kind of functionalities to the already existing products, I'm giving me more chance that my patent and inventions are approved, right? So these are some basic examples. I do have many more examples. Maybe I guess the interested students can get in touch, and maybe I can provide them certain basic examples, so that it means gives a food for thought, and they could, I guess, convert those ideas, right, mere ideas, into patentable inventions, right? So I guess this was all about patents. Patents are granted for a tenure of 20 years. uh, what was the main focus is that a person should not be restricted to a particular kind of domain, right? So it could be any domain. So a person from agriculture and pharma and medical industry could also make problem, could solve problems that we face in day-to-day life, right? Maybe certain problems that are related to water bottles, or maybe smart dustbins you can make, right? If you are not sure means what type of sensors do we use, you can probably means mail us that this is the invention that we want to make. We are actually not clear on the technical aspect of us as to how we have to do it. We will provide you proper technical support, but the main the main thing is that you should know what problem you are solving and how you are solving that particular problem, right? So I gave you certain 4 to 5 examples. That was umbrella integrated into a bag, some smart trophy, advanced geyser, right? Maybe anti-suicidal ceiling fans are there, but how can we improve over those ceiling fans, right? I gave you an example that we can add certain micro projectors or a display that could immediately connect you with, I guess, your relatives, right? So maybe if we can integrate, we have higher chances that our inventions might be approved, right, by the examiner. So this was it, I guess. There are various other sections, but I guess major crux we have covered, means as to what are patents and what are the validity. Means there are persons or students from medical domain also. So patents related to method of treatment that solves a particular kind of disease, right? So is not, are not patentable, right? So a method of treatment that renders someone free from disease is not patentable. But what you can do is that you can make an apparatus that means a surgical apparatus that is there, that is patentable, right? Maybe if you are tending towards a method of cosmetic surgery, means that is patentable, right? Maybe you should focus more on the composition aspect rather than the method, right? So a method of treating cancer is not patentable, but a composition, right, that treats cancer is patentable. So what I want to say is that if you are a medical student, you focus more on the composition part rather than how that method is working, right? So if your composition is different, you can have patent over those composition, protecting that composition, right? And you can protect the medical equipments also. Maybe there are certain procedures under cosmetic surgery, right? So those are also patentable, but a method of treating cancer would not be patentable. But a pharmaceutical composition that protects or cures cancer can be patentable, because what we are doing is that we are patenting a composition rather than a method, right? So I guess this was it from my side. If there are any questions, then I'll be very, very happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, sir. Uh, it was a really very interactive and very nicely explained you by you that how the real life examples are there. Very simply, you told that how advanced visors and smart trophies, such ideas can be generated and they can be rather more innovative, and we can go more and more into this thing. I just want to ask, sir, that as you focus that in case of medical students, we are more to focused on the composition rather on the procedures. So
Yes.
composition, you mean to say that what are the ingredients used in that they can be replaced by some novel ones?
Yes, ma'am. So how that composition? So there would be a composition behind a paracetamol, right? So what ingredients are we
Yeah,
using? And if there is any efficiency data that can prove that why my medicine is better than others, right? How my composition is different from others.
yeah,
If we can prove that, then of course it will be highly advantageous,
right.
right? Because a mere means method
Yeah,
of treatment are not patentable in India under Section 3I, right? So it is important to focus if you are making something on medical industry, either focus on the apparatus part, right? So some equipments that you want
okay.
to make, so those are patentable. If
Yeah, that,
you yes,
yeah, equipments can be patented, right,
yes,
right.
apparatus, the
Sir,
equipments
one
can be
thing more.
patented, and but means if you want to focus more on the composition aspect, so they have high chances that it may be patented.
Secondly, sir, I have one more query from the student side, because students do have idea, but they are not able to put forward on the paper. So, what kind of support or what kind of guidance you could provide? No doubt the patent cell of the university is time and again supporting us for everything, but still the students want that something what can be done at the level of you, so that the students are able to put their ideas on the paper.
So, ma'am, we can have these sessions regularly. Maybe I guess the interested students, I can give them my email ID, and we can have sessions, live sessions in which they could tell me about the about
Okay.
their query, and then we can solve them, right? Because what can happen? Suppose take an example of anti-suicide ceiling fan, right? So maybe certain individuals,
Yeah.
they have the idea, they know how to solve it, but they don't know how a micro projector works, right? So and they also don't know what
Yeah.
sensors do we use, right? So even if you have a good idea
Yeah.
and you want to means you have a problem statement that this problem will be solved by using this idea, and maybe if there are technical limitations, right, if they are not aware of the technology or they are not aware of various components that needs to be integrated, they can discuss with me and my team personally, and then we can suggest them certain ideas. It happens that various times the inventions are rejected, and what we do is that we provide a gist, we provide certain suggestions that please integrate these kind of components to make it a novel invention, right? So these kind of support can be given, and if a student is lacking somewhere technically, then of course we call that particular student, and we suggest to him that please include or integrate these kind of components, right? Maybe I'll share my email ID and phone number. If any student is facing any kind of difficulty also, then I guess we'll be very happy to help them.
Okay, sir. Kindly share it, sir. Kindly.
So ma'am, I'll share it. I guess I'll share it with you after this session, because means only the
No
interested
issue.
students
No
will get
problem.
it, right?
No
So
problem.
right.
Right, sir. Right, right, sir. Right. Thank you so much for being with us and highlighting about that how the small ideas they can go for more and more higher level of research and for patentable they can be copyright, they can be trademark, or they can be the IP rights of an individual. Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time during this period when the entire week is going to be celebrated as IP Day. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very
May I request Dr. Piyusha Sharma for vote of thanks, please.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Although we have already thanked our speakers, but let me take this opportunity to thank them again. So, on behalf of Patent Cell, Faculty of Agriculture and Life Sciences, and Faculty of Allied Health Sciences, I thank Dr. H.K. Sadana, CSIO, CSIR, and Mr. Karan Puri, Associate Vice President, Innobel IP, for your intuitive presentation. I appreciate lecture. The connectivity that was created with the audience was commendable, and content that was shared was informative, enlightening, and stimulating. The way Mr. Karan gave examples from specific fields to relate to the students was really worth it in order to make the audience relate to them and was really helpful for their better understanding. I'm sure students might have got clear insight of what IPR is and how it is beneficial. I take this platform as an opportunity to motivate students and request them to start exploring their ideas and give them words. We at Patent Cell and our patent experts in Innobel IP are here to help you to make it patentable and file it at your name at zero cost. As university is bearing all the finances involved, you just have to share your idea. The respected speakers kindly accept our vote of thanks for a great presentation. Thanks for giving time from your busy schedule. We really look forward to have you again with us. I request Dr. Sidhu to please take over.
Thank you, Piyusha. Thank you so much. So, at the last but not least, I would like to thank the management of Desh University, all the resource persons of the day, Dr. Sadana ji and Mr. Karan Puri ji. I thank the IT media, and especially I thank the patent cell of the university and the students as well as the faculty of agriculture and paramedical sciences. So at the end, I conclude only that focusing on the theme of 2020-22, that IP and youth innovatives are for a better futures, and you being the young people are the innovators, the creators, and the entrepreneurs of tomorrow. Through this creativity, young people in all regions they should drive the change and carve the pathways for a better future. So thank you so much. Thanks to all who are present over here. Thank you so much. Have a nice time.
Thank you very much, ma'am, and thank you everyone for joining the session. I hope it was informative, and I guess I hope that there would be some subsequent sessions on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
So may I leave the session now?